Hey everybody, welcome to week 4, which is probably my favorite week of this class. We get to talk about gender roles in all of the stories, and there is a lot that we can cover. So I will try to rein myself in and not make it so that you're all drinking from the proverbial fire hose, but just be ready for that. The stories this week are some of the best known fairy tales ever. Just about everybody has heard some version of Beauty and the Beast, or Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, the Frog King, ones like that. So, for example, our book tells us that almost every culture has some form of the Beauty and the Beast story, and that the earliest one that's known is Cupid and Psyche, which was written by Apuleius in the 2nd century of the Common Era. So why do you think that this is such a common fairy tale? Personally, I think that it's got something to do with the fact that for most of history, marriages were arranged, or at least they were for the higher social classes. It was really rare for members of the elite society to marry for love because the main focus was on family dynasty, making heirs, making political alliances, and probably improving one's social class. Love simply was not a factor in most marriages, and if you fell in love with your spouse after the fact, that was a delightful bonus, but it was definitely not a requirement. So considering that, think about why a story about a girl and a beast falling in love with each other might be a somewhat universal theme. This leads us to the topic of names. Names are always important in fairy tales as they are in real life. At their most basic, names give a person a point of reference for our own identity. My name's Kristen, my dog's name is Pixie, you all have your own names, you get the idea. It's just a vital part of who we are. We can also have more than one name. Those of you who are parents, for example, certainly know that. You probably remember what a shock it was to your kids when they learned what your first name was and that it wasn't actually some variation of mom or dad. That's always kind of a shocking moment for a lot of children. It's usually the first time that they realize that you have a life and an identity outside of your role as their parent. Names can also be given to inanimate objects, which gives them an identity of their own and makes them into a character in their own right within a certain story. So just off the top of my head, some things, objects that are named are Excalibur, which as we know is the sword of King Arthur. Joyeux, which is another sword, that one belonged to Richard the Lionheart. The One Ring, which granted is more of a title than a name, but just about everybody knows that that refers to Sauron's Ring of Power in The Lord of the Rings. There's Mjolnir, which is Thor's hammer, and another one that I can think of is Mons Meg, which is this great big cannon that lives on the top of Edinburgh Castle. So each of those things have names and identities outside of the identities of their owners, and so if they were in a story, they could then become individual characters in and of themselves. But what about the flip side? What happens when a character has no name at all? So think about Bluebeard's wife from week 2, for example. She remains nameless for her entire story. As a reader, how did that influence your understanding of her, that she didn't have a name? Did you give her a name in your head? I know that I've done that before with other nameless characters. Did you view her role as wife? Excuse me. Did you view her in her role as wife with a capital W? Was that her name in a sense? Did you notice maybe that, or did you not notice that she was nameless? If you didn't notice, you probably should give some thought to that and figure out why. What about the huntsman in Little Red Riding Hood? He was nameless too, so did you view him the same way that you viewed Bluebeard's wife, or was he different somehow? Being without a name in real life can really mess up your mental health, but being nameless in literature actually has several different effects. Depending on the time period, there are lots of reasons why a person is nameless, male and female characters alike. In more modern literature, or in modern interpretations that are imposed upon literature, namelessness can turn into something really cool and can actually be quite positive. So for this week, I would like for you to think about the power of names. How do we see a character who is nameless? Does it give them more power or less, and why? How does it affect our interpretation of a story when there are named and nameless characters? So drop your thoughts in the threads, in the classrooms, and this should hopefully be a really interesting conversation, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what you come up with. And as always, let me know if you have any questions. I'll see you in class.